3, 2, 1. Good evening, good morning, Leavenworth citizens. I was still back at our meeting, commission meeting last evening. I hope everyone is doing well this week. Welcome to our bi-weekly Mayor's Facebook Live Town Hall. Today we're going to follow a similar format to our previous 13 Facebook Live Town Halls. I'll just quickly run over the topics that will be discussed today and just briefly introduce our subject matter expert for today. But the topics that we will cover today will be the census for 2020. And our first guest, after I get finished talking here, will be Dr. Alan Organ, Partnership Specialist, United States Census Bureau. One of Dr. Organ's roles is to work with local communities to provide data and help promote the value of the U.S. Census and accurate population counts to cities, counties, nonprofits, and communities as a whole. And once I turn it over to Dr. Organ here in about 30 seconds, I asked him to give a little bit of summary of his background. Well-qualified doctor to be doing this work on behalf of our citizens in the state, in the nation, and here in Leavenworth. So after that, I'll COVID-19, update the latest statistics from the state and the county with respect to those statistics I've covered in the past. We'll talk about some COVID-related programs, probably at that point turn it over to the city manager who's got the details on many of these or the COVID-related federal programs that are in play. City budget, Camp Leavenworth, or as we're calling it this year, Lovingworth. And then after the city managers finish there, I'll come back and wrap up. So that's the game plan for this morning's Facebook Live Town Hall. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Alan Organ, Partnership Specialist, United States Census Bureau. Dr. Organ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
A little about my background. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, grew up on the beach, came to Kansas to do my PhD at KU. And following that, I went to Missouri to do my MD, and I practiced pediatrics as well as taught at KU Med Center for about 35 years before I retired. I was joking with the mayor a little while ago. He said, "So how did you end up in census?" I said, "My wife told me I needed to get out of the house and get a job, so I took the census exam in 2010, and I've been working as a partnership specialist on and off since 2010. And this is my second census. I'm really privileged to have the city of Leavenworth, the first city in Kansas, as one of the cities that I work with. When I first started with the Census Bureau, we were under a hiring freeze in 2017. So I had Montana, North Dakota, Oklahoma, and Kansas all to myself, and I did an awful lot of traveling. Now I just travel 6 counties in the eastern Kansas area, making sure that people understand the importance of the census. So what I thought I would do first is give you a little background about what the census is and why we do it and why it's important. And I'm going to ask Taylor to go ahead and start the 1-minute video to give you a brief overview. Taylor? You'll have to click on the, go back and click on the arrow on the graphic right there. Why don't we just go on?
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Organ. That's okay. Was it just kind of an overview of this 2020 census in our
Yeah, let's go to the next slide and we'll take it from there.
No problem. Can we go to the next slide? Is it freezing up? Okay.
Taylor, want to move on?
Well, yeah, just go ahead. You got, I'm sure you have a copy of the slides there. I mean, you can, the fact that we can't project them is not great, but that's okay, Dr. Morgan. You know this subject backwards and forwards, so I think at this point, just take us through what you would like us to learn.
This is the 24th census that we are doing. It's done every 10 years. This is the decennial census. The Census Bureau does 130 other censuses every year, crime and prevention, health surveys, American community surveys. So census it basically works every day of the year. This is only every 10 years. And it's important for two reasons, power and money. The number of representatives we have from the state of Kansas that go to Washington. Oh, all right, perfect. So every decade since 1790, the U.S. Census Bureau has conducted a constitutionally mandated census. So it is law. Kansas is part of a 12-state region out of Denver, Dallas, which is where our headquarters are. And we go ahead and prepare to do this every 10 years. We've been working since, well, actually the day after 2010 was done, starting to plan for the 2020 census. We cover an awful lot of material and a lot of territory. Let's go on to the next slide if we can. Why do we conduct the census? It's in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 3 of the U.S. Constitution mandates a head count every 10 years of everyone residing in the United States, including people of all ages, races, ethnic groups, citizens, non-citizens from all the 50 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands. This means that in our territory and our region, the 12-state region, we have 5 international borders. So we have in North Dakota 22,000 students that are not citizens of the United States that live here at least 9 months out of the year, and every 10 years they are counted in the decennial census. Next slide, please. We also conduct the census because of community funding. We distribute over $675 billion annually, or $67.5 trillion between the two censuses in federal funds. If we don't get an accurate count in 2020, Leavenworth is stuck with those numbers for 10 years in terms of money coming back. And I'm going to show you some examples of why it's important, but the most important one right now is COVID-19. The COVID testing and hospitalization is covered by FEMA funds, and those FEMA funds are directly related to the number of people that reside in Leavenworth. And that includes our military folks up in Fort Leavenworth. Next slide, please. Power is important. It's how we're represented in Congress. And you can see in 2010, Missouri, just across the river, lost 1 congressional representative. And they are very angry and trying to get that one back. Kansas will not lose one in this census, but if things continue, we could possibly lose one in the 2030 census. So it's important to make sure we have an accurate count in the right place, the right time. Next slide. Census data is used for planning for future needs, scientific research, housing needs, publish economic statistics about the U.S. and its people and more every month. So census is important for our city planners. Also the number of ambulances, the number of doctors, the number of hospitals, they're all related to decennial census data. Next slide, please. This is an unusual census because in the past years, if you remember, you got a form in the mail and you filled out that form. And if you didn't fill out the form, then somebody came and knocked on your door. Well, this time you can do that. You can fill out a census form, a paper form that has already arrived at most U.S. postal addresses, or you can fill it out online, which is the easiest, safest, and fastest way to do it. You can actually call it in if you don't understand the census form. There are 13 numbers in 13 different languages, including English, that you can call in. Or if you're lonely, don't do anything and we'll come knocking on your door, and that will start next month.
Okay.
Next slide, please. These are the 59 languages that are supported for the census. The 13 on the left in bold are the ones that you can actually get a census form in that language. The others, if you were to call the census number on the census form, somebody who speaks one of these dialects will call you back and take the census information. They are Census Bureau employees. Next slide, please. Now, how safe is your data? We take in the Census Bureau an oath of confidentiality, it's Title 13. We are bound by law that we cannot reveal any information. Now, this is interesting because I spoke to the NAACP reactivated chapter up in Leavenworth a couple months ago, and I told them that if a census tract was small enough that you could identify somebody that lived there, that the information would be diluted with multiple census tracts so that nobody could pick out where you live. And it occurred to me that as I grew up in Los Angeles, the census tract that I lived in as a young boy, we were the only Caucasian family. There was one Asian family, one Caucasian family, and the rest were African American. So I could easily be identified if you looked in the census data, if it was revealed. So if you were trying to find me, the Census Bureau would release information that were multiple census tracts so that I would be diluted in, maybe 5 or 10 tracts. What's also important about this is that if you reside in Leavenworth, for instance, during this census, and you are not a citizen, and you're working towards your citizenship, when they ask you, how long have you lived here? You can contact the Census Bureau and they can look up that you indeed did live in Leavenworth in 2020. So that could be used for your required number of years that you lived in the United States. So it's a felony for us to do that. It's a five-year imprisonment with a roommate named Bubba and a $250,000 fine for every occurrence. So if I were to tell 5 people's information, that would be 5 times the 5 years, 25 years in jail, and 5 times 250,000. Next slide. Here's what's really important for Leavenworth. This is from the League of Kansas Municipalities. If we have an undercount in Leavenworth, like the undercount was in 2010, for every address that we miss in Leavenworth, $53,923.80 is lost. So just multiply that by 100 houses and you're up in the millions. This is important. So you can see this on this PowerPoint. This infographic is available through kansascounts.org. It's kind of interesting to see where your city is, but the most important thing is one address is almost $54,000 that's lost in federal funding. And I can tell you that could buy almost a whole ambulance by itself, just one address. Next slide. These are the census tracts that are in Leavenworth, not the county. There are about 4 additional ones that are not on this. The darker the color, the better the self-response rate. And I'm going to be the first one to congratulate the city of Leavenworth. The mayor doesn't even know this, because, and neither does Taylor. We have a number of census tracts that have already surpassed the final self-response rate for 2010. Now that's important because that means that we have the data. We don't have to come knocking on those doors. It's very expensive. It costs about $97 every time I have to knock on somebody's door to get census information. But we've got better response from the fort, and we've got about 3 census tracts that have already reached are better than their goal in 2010. And we have a number of others that are very, very close. And within the next several weeks, we'll be collecting data all the way up to October 31st. The next several weeks, we should surpass that. So that puts Leavenworth up in one of the better cities in Kansas in terms of self-response, and that's important. Next slide, please.
Dr. Organ, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
How many census tracts are within the city of Leavenworth?
I believe it's 10.
Yeah, it looked somewhere
11.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I could see the different variations on the color, but I just didn't know the exact number, but that's good.
Well, this slide that's up there now shows all the census tracts that are just within the city, what the final self-response rate was for 2010. And you can see we've got 4 census tracts that are already ahead of that, which is wonderful. Look at census tract 9819, that's by the fort. The self-response rate was 61.5% in 2010, and we're already at almost 71%. That's almost 10% better. So I'm very proud of what my folks in Leavenworth have done, and I expect big things. We will be collecting, and this is a silver lining for COVID, we'll be collecting data all the way up to October 31st of 2020 instead of stopping at July 31st. So we have a much better chance of making sure that we have a complete count. And that means that your city planners in the mayor's office will be able to apply for those federal grants, and based on population should get a bigger share of the money that should come back here. Next slide, please.
Did it lock up again?
It's showing it online.
Oh, here it is. Who was hard to count in Leavenworth?
Yes. Children under 5, people living in poverty. Our usual groups, the African Americans, Latinos, Asians, Native Hawaiians. Believe it or not, we do have Native Hawaiians in Leavenworth. Native Americans and immigrant communities traditionally across the country are the hardest to count. And what's interesting about this is those areas that are hard to count are the areas that actually need the money the most. So we need to, we've identified our areas, and now we're working very hard to make sure those areas are covered. Next slide, please. So how do we get the count in Leavenworth? Well, we have been distributing flyers and bulletin inserts as well as hiring people from the area. The weekend of the 26th, we're having a census faith weekend. We're contacting all the churches, all the synagogues, all the mosques in the area to go ahead and talk about census from the pulpit. It's important. You can give a short presentation on how the census works. And this is about as short a presentation as you're going to see. And Taylor has it so that any groups in Leavenworth need to use it, you have my permission to do it. The city has been encouraging people to respond to the 2020 census. They are the trusted voices in the area, and that's important. So by April 1st, 2020, everyone in the U.S. should have received an invitation to participate in the census. And then what's most important is we can set up a GOTC, get out the count, to help people access the internet to complete the census. We had set up in Leavenworth a series of mobile questionnaire assistance centers. So if you didn't have internet access or you didn't understand the census form, you could go to the library or several other organizations and get help filling out the census. Well, with COVID-19, that put a damper on that. But as restrictions are lessened, we may be able to again utilize some important sources like the library or some of the service organizations to set up these mobile questionnaire assistance centers and help everybody get their information into Census. If not, if you don't want to do that, then if you go to my2020census.gov and click on that, there'll be phone numbers that you can call, and somebody from the Census Bureau can actually take your information. Then you don't have to worry about sending it in or having to have an internet access. Next slide. Now, I'll take any questions that you have before turning this back over to the mayor and the city.
I've got one or two questions, Dr. Organ. Thank you for that very informative presentation. So will there be a time over the next month and a half where there'll be actually people out going door to door to try to up that percentage of our citizens who respond to the census? Will that be part of the program this year, or are we doing away with that?
They are being trained right now. As a matter of fact, my wife just said goodbye to me. She's on her way to the area census office to start her training. She's going to be an enumerator, probably in Johnson County.
Okay.
So that should be starting sometime around the middle of August.
Good. And I know what you were talking about as far as mobile questionnaire assistance centers. I know a few months ago, just before we had the COVID-19 health crisis strike the nation and the world, and Leavenworth County and the city of Leavenworth, our library director talked about the library's role in doing just what you talked about as far as making technology available so people could go online and complete the questionnaire. And I'm going to follow up with him, and not sure whether I think he has shortened hours right now for people coming into the library, but I'm going to follow up with him and see how that's going to work over the next 6 weeks. But I know that he was cranked up for that, and obviously for a month and a half or 2 months or 2.5 months, the library wasn't open to the public. But I believe they've opened for a couple of hours each day, but I know people enjoy going in there. We've got good information technology in there to get people to fill out the census form.
If we have a lessening of the restrictions for COVID-19, and Todd at the library wants somebody from Census to come by to help with these mobile questionnaire assistance centers, we should be able to do that.
Okay.
We just need some notice.
Very good. So just how about talking about, so things will end on the August 31st. Then just talk in general, what happens. I know that data has to be calculated and everything, but what happens? What are the major milestones going forward in terms of the reporting of the data and things like that?
Well, in a perfect universe, December 31st of the census year is when the President of the United States gets the final figure.
Okay.
We will be getting that to, assuming Congress approves it, April 30th. That'll go to the President, and then about 3 months later, the information will start coming down to the states and the cities so that we can go ahead and plan for the future.
Okay.
And that's, getting it in by December is ideal because it gives cities a chance to look at their budgets early enough. Mm-hmm. Now, it's going to be harder for you guys to do this because you're not going to have as much time to get your budgets in order and see how much money will come back and apply for those grants. But what I'm hoping is that we get such a tremendous response that Leavenworth is going to benefit regardless of COVID-19.
That would be fantastic. That certainly is the goal. So is there anything, and I think the city manager and his staff and our strategic communications officer, Melissa Bauer, and our assistant city manager, Taylor Tedder, have been doing a good job getting the word out. Is there anything else that you have any suggestions for the city in terms of the next 6 weeks in terms of what we could do?
If people are still looking for jobs, we're still hiring.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly what the pay is in Leavenworth, but in Johnson and Wyandotte counties, it's $17 an hour, including travel. And I think it's a little bit less than that for Leavenworth and Atchison, just based on population. But we're still hiring, and they can go to 2020 census.gov/jobs
Okay.
and apply online.
That'd be good. That's good. That's very good, valuable information, and hopefully some of the people who are listening, if they would like to work on something that's very, very important for our community, for our state, and for our nation, I think that would be great. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything that you'd like to conclude with, Dr. Organ? I want to thank you on behalf of the citizens for taking the time to put together the presentation and also letting us know kind of where we stand, what the status is, and a little bit more about the process of getting an accurate census count for 2020.
I'm here for help. I'm based out of Denver, but I live in Overland Park.
Okay.
So I'm only 40 minutes away from my folks in Leavenworth if you need help. Very
good. Thank you again for your time and your expertise this morning, Dr. Organ. It was nice meeting you, and maybe we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
In person this time.
He said in person next time.
In person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we need to hopefully get back to that state of affairs sooner than later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good rest of your week. Okay, I'm going to transition to COVID-19. I'm going to go over some stats, probably not in as much detail as I have in previous Facebook Live town halls, but I'll start off with kind of an overview of the Leavenworth County stats in terms of, this was data as of Monday, which 13th of July. I think the report comes in and is posted on the county website about 4:30 p.m. Number of confirmed positive cases of people testing positive for COVID-19 at that time, 1,227. And that includes 311 community cases, and 67 at the Grossman Center, and then 849 Lansing Correctional Facility inmates. All that totaling up to 1,227. And I always like to refer back to the last Facebook Live town hall that I conducted. So in the last 2 weeks, that number that I just mentioned, 1,227, is an increase of 65 cases in the last 2 weeks. 65 cases for Leavenworth County. And that's an average of 4.6 new cases per day, 4.6 new cases per day. For the last 3 reports, which would have been Monday, the 13th of July, there were 14 community cases that were recorded. That was Monday, 14. The previous Friday, which was the 10th of July, there were 17 new community cases reported. And Wednesday, which was the 8th of July, a week ago today, there were 6 community confirmed positive cases in the community. So that's kind of an overview, top-level data from the county with respect to number of people in the county testing positive. Let me just transition to the Kansas statistics. I will probably come back to the Leavenworth County statistics with respect to testing, but I want to do that after giving an overview of the Kansas statistics. This is as of 13 July, which was Monday, 12:30 p.m. Number of cases within the state, 20,058, which is an increase of 5,615 from what I reported based on the state statistics 2 weeks ago. And that's a 39% increase. Now, a good deal of that probably is due to the increased testing, but that's a 39% increase from 2 weeks ago in terms of the number of people testing positive for COVID-19 within the state of Kansas. Hospitalizations as of Monday in the state, 1,343. Deaths, 288. Now, 2 weeks ago, the number of people who COVID patients who had passed away from COVID-19 stood at 270, which means that in the course of the last 2 weeks, there was an increase of 18 people who who unfortunately passed away. That represents a 6.7% increase from 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, what I reported from the previous 2 weeks, there had been a 10% increase. So the 6.7 is definitely a statistic that is going in the right direction with respect to the death rate of people who contract COVID-19. Talking a little bit about hospitalizations, circling back a little bit. The age group of 55 through 64 years of age has the highest number of people and the highest percentage of people who have tested positive who have been hospitalized. And for that particular age group, I looked early this morning, they represent 55 to 64 years of age, 20.6% of the people hospitalized for COVID-19 come from that 55 to 64 years of age, which corresponds to what we know about people getting older and having more comorbidities and those type of things, problems with things like hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular problems. So that kind of makes sense, and that's held consistent in the last few months as I've reported that particular age group with respect to hospitalizations. Let me talk about the case rate. The total case rate in Kansas per 1,000 people, and this is people who have tested positive, is 6.88%. 6.88%. Last time it was 4.9%, 4.96%. So that's an increase of almost 2% in terms of the number of people per 1,000 testing positive for COVID-19. An increase of almost 2% since I reported this 2 weeks ago. Leavenworth cases, as I mentioned, is 1,227. And this is a total case rate within Leavenworth County per 1,000 people of 15.3%. And last time I reported 2 weeks ago, it was 14.2%, which is an increase of almost 1%, really 0.9%. So that total case rate of people testing, total case rate per 1,000, that test rate of people testing positive is going up at least somewhat in the last 2 weeks. For the total case rates per county in the surrounding counties, this is the number of people, of course, who per 1,000 in terms of people who have contracted the COVID-19 disease. Wyandotte, the total case rate is 19.2%, which is very much in excess of what I just reported for the county of Leavenworth, which is 15.3%. Johnson is 5.2%, Douglas 3.7%, and Atchison 2.6%. So Wyandotte is exceeding us in terms of the number of people per 1,000 contracting COVID-19 at 19.2% versus 15.3% for Leavenworth County. Let me go quickly to testing. Kansas, number of people tested as of Monday is 231,175. And this represents an increase of almost 55,000 from what I reported 2 weeks ago. That represents a 31% increase in the number of Kansans being tested, and of course that's very good. It's obvious that the testing program within Kansas is ramping up, testing many more people, and that's a good thing in terms of trying to ferret out who has been contracted the disease, because once you do that, you can start the contract tracing and get these people quarantined and start tracking them. And if they need to get hospitalized, then they've been identified. So that is a very, very good statistic as far as I'm concerned, as far as the state. Number of people who have tested, for the people tested, the number of the rate of positivity for Kansas is 8.7%. And that 2 weeks ago it was 8.2%, so that's an increase of 0.5% of those people being tested. The percent positive, people who have tested positive, has increased by 0.5%. Testing rate per 1,000 within the state, it's 79.35%, and this 2 weeks ago it was 60.53%. So that represents about an 18% increase with respect to the number of people who have been tested per 1,000 people. That 80% increase is good news, as I mentioned, in terms of an increase in the expansion and the availability of testing. That is a good thing for the state, and since we're part of the state, a good thing for Leavenworth County. Leavenworth County testing rate per 1,000 people. Number of patients tested as of Monday, 8,510. And once again, a good testing rate of 104%, and that's the testing rate, number of people tested per 1,000 people. 2 weeks ago, it was about 88%, so we've had an approximately 16% increase in our testing rate, which is based on the number of people tested per 1,000 people within the county, and this is definitely good news. It means that more testing is going on, and that can only be a good thing with respect to finding out who has got this disease and then taking the proper steps to get those people kind of isolated, conducting tracing to find out who possibly have come in contact with this person, getting them quarantined if necessary, and going on from there. So in terms of the testing rates in surrounding counties, for Wyandotte County, the testing rate per 1,000 people is 120.9%. Johnson County, 98.7. So once again, between Johnson County and Wyandotte County in terms of our testing rate. Douglas County is 70%, and 67.6% for Atchison. And the point is, all significant increases since my last town hall of 2 weeks ago, which gets to the fact that testing is ramping up and doing relatively pretty well within the state of Kansas. Let me talk a little bit about last night. City Commission talked at the end of the meeting of having a discussion at our study session next Tuesday about at least discussing the possibility, no intent to, at that particular study session, take any type of vote or anything, but we want to generate a discussion on whether the city should at least consider putting a requirement in for an ordinance where we would require masks within the city of Leavenworth. Of course, if we did that, that would be in contravention of what the county did last week or 2 weeks ago in terms of opting out of Governor Kelly's executive order that mandated masks throughout the state. But I want to make sure that people understand that the intent is to have a discussion during that study session, and I asked the city manager to come with a draft ordinance, which cities can do under their home rule authority, but at this point as a means to stimulate the discussion, to look at the pros and cons of doing something where we would do that. But we have not expressed an intent that we go immediately from there to implementing and voting on an order to require masks within the city. But we are going to discuss the subject fulsomely. And I mean, when you look at it, there's probably three courses of action that we should look at and that we'll discuss. One is, after we get the information, the facts, any assumptions that are being made by the public health officials within Leavenworth, we'll have a discussion of things like enforcement, which I don't is important if we were to go that route, and it is, I would say, one of the issues for cities that have decided that they have decided to put in place a requirement for masks. there is, it's not as easy in terms of the enforcement. So that'll be one of the things we talk about. But we could just stick with no change. Just stick with what the county has done 2 weeks ago in terms of opting out of the governor's order. Of course, there would be a possibility that we might say, well, based on this, we want this particular draft ordinance to come to a vote at a future meeting sometime after next Tuesday's study session. And then the kind of a third option is, well, let's just put this draft ordinance on the shelf, and if things get worse, get worse in a dramatic way, maybe at that point we bring it back and look at it and see what we might want to do. One of the things we discussed last night is that putting some emphasis on this particular subject, I think, is critically important at any time, but particularly with the schools that will be opening up probably within the next month, if not 3 weeks. Certainly, if the better things are within our community, within the city, within the county, with respect to a lessening transmission rate, certainly bodes better for opening schools and having less of a chance of kids, students picking up something from one of the members of their family or elsewhere in the community. So we thought the timing of this was pretty important for us to at least discuss it. But I want to make sure that the intent is not to go immediately, that we are definitely going to put a new ordinance in requiring face masks within the city of Leavenworth. We are studying it, and that's what we'll be doing next Tuesday. And I can say that I've gotten a lot of emails over the last 18 hours or so. That's fine. I appreciate the interest of the people within the city on this particular subject, and I've read every one of them, and I'm sure that'll be part of what the City Commission talks about next Tuesday. Public comment, public reaction to what we discussed last night and what we intend to do at the study session next Tuesday. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager right now to go over a few things. Mr. Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things going on around the city. The city is in the middle of our budget process. Last Friday, the city staff met with the City Commission in open session at the Riverfront Community Center to talk about our 2021 budget. Just a couple quick highlights. The draft document is online if anybody would like to go online and read that. If you have any questions about the budget, what it does or doesn't do, you can certainly reach out to city staff and we'll give you some information. First, the date to keep in mind is the open public hearing for the budget is August 11th. That will be here at City Hall. That night, the City Commission will open a public hearing and then move to potentially adopt the budget, depending on what that public hearing would be. If you have questions between now and then, you can reach out to your commissioners as well if you have any questions about what's in the budget. So just a couple top line headlines from the budget. The budget proposes no property tax increase, no tax increase across the board for the city of Leavenworth. We do face sort of unprecedented uncertainty due to COVID-19 and its impact on sales tax, which is the primary revenue source for the city of Leavenworth. About 45% of our budget is sales tax. We simply don't know what the impact is. We don't even know what the impact is going to be on 2020, let alone 2021. So we have a very conservative budget. The two things that the commission prioritized was public safety first and foremost, full funding of the police department, fire department, personnel across all city services, certainly our refuse and our streets and our parks employees. So public safety first and foremost, and then infrastructure. We did not reduce any of the funding that has been allocated for streets, for fixing our stormwater infrastructure, our sewer infrastructure, anything related to that. Another thing the City Commission directed staff to do, and we were able to do within the budget, is a 0% increase for refuse. So for your trash service, there's no increase for 2021. We're able to accomplish our mission with the resources that we have currently. There is I call it minor increase in the sewer rates of 3%. That is due to Kansas Department of Health and Environment and EPA regulations due to how we have to disinfect our water. That's done with a UV lighting system, and we have to replace quite a few of those lights Doesn't sound like a lot, but the price tag for those replacements is well over $100,000. And so that rate increase will help us meet the federal and state guidelines that we have to run a wastewater treatment plant. So those are the headlines in the budget. I do encourage you to go to the city's website and take a look at what the plan is. There's a transmittal letter from the city manager that does do a little bit more, covers everything I just covered, and then a little bit more in depth, but doesn't really get into the weeds of line items. And I encourage you to read that and reach out to the city if you have any questions. Just a couple quick notes. We're getting close to the 2020 pavement management program. That's a $2 million mill and overlay throughout the city. We open bids on that next week, and then we will bring that to the commission for approval on the 28th, so 2 weeks from yesterday, the July 28th. That'll come to the city commission, so work can get started on that. The Thornton Street project is ahead of schedule. It's going extremely well. They're on the west portion of the project now. And then once that's finished here in mid to late September, there'll be a final coating of asphalt that goes all the way the length of the entire project. So again, that project is on budget, on time, and going really well. The Stubby Park is done. However, we haven't opened it yet because we're waiting on the installation of the fence. There's going to be a fence between the new park structure and 4th Street for the safety of the children playing there, and we didn't feel like we wanted to open that with the fence out there. We're working with the fence contractor. We hope in the next 7 to 10 days that fence will be complete and we can open the new Stubby Park for our residents to enjoy. So that's what's going on in the city right now, and I don't think there's any questions from the audience, but if there's anything else you'd like me to hit on?
No, just with respect to Thornton Street project, I think that final step is going to be the kind of building up the rest of the overlay. And so for those of you who've called me or contacted me about the bumps on the south and north side of the intersection between Thornton and 2nd Avenue, those will be taken care of at that particular point in time. So I did have more than a few folks call me or send me an email on that. So that's just a little FYI. I'm going to talk a little bit, not at great length, about what I've talked about in the past in terms of economic support to businesses, the programs that have been out there. Not as much in the news in recent weeks or in the last month about the Paycheck Protection Program. Of course, it's winding down at this point. I think funds are probably still available. The Congress extended the application deadline from June 30th to August 8th, so there's still some time, about 3 weeks left if any small businesses want to take advantage of that Paycheck Protection Program. And with respect to forgiveness, and there's been a little less discussion about forgiveness, probably because the extension on applying for the forgiveness of the loan, remember that loan is like 1%, but if you meet certain criteria, I think primarily that 60% of the loan amount has been used for worker pay, with the other 40% going to overhead costs such as rent and utilities, that you would have a good case for being forgiven and the loan basically turning into a grant. So, but there is time for that because the deadline for forgiveness, this whole forgiveness period, has been extended to the end of September at a very minimum. Somebody told me to the end of October, but I believe it's to the end of September 2020. Another thing that's on a lot of people's mind is the pandemic unemployment assistance, which came from the federal government, which was $600 additional per week for people unemployed, which is added to about approximately $300 that people get through the state, making that about $900 per week. Now that pandemic unemployment assistance was part of the, I believe it was part of the CARES Act, passed by Congress, signed by the President. That is set to expire on the 31st of July. There's been talk of some of our national politicians of what's going to be done. Unfortunately, Congress is not in session right now. They're coming back next week, and I would think this is one thing they're going to have to take up. I have no idea whether it'll be extended or what'll be done, but I know that it'll be a point that our national politicians in Washington are talking about it, because it is set to expire on the 31st of July. You know, one of the things that was nice about that pandemic unemployment assistance program was that it applied to people previously who were not eligible for the benefits through the state, such as sole proprietors, such as Form 1099 contractors, people who are working in that gig economy, who don't have a regular 9-to-5 job, but pick up work from companies, you know, to work on a project that might take a day or 2 days or maybe 10 days, but, you know, they're not, you know, they're kind of employed as a 1099 contractor, quite frankly, and great more of our economy is the gig economy these days versus what it was 5 or 10 years ago. And so those people, those sole proprietors and 1099 contractors, were eligible for this pandemic unemployment assistance, which was a good feature of that bill and something that maybe some people didn't realize. The emergency injury disaster loan, which is a loan that's been available through the Small Business Administration for at least 2.5 decades. Good number of businesses applied for that particular loan directly through the Small Business Administration. When I talked to Will Katz earlier this morning, who's the director of the Small Business Development Center for the northeast portion of Kansas, and who comes and provides his subject matter expertise to business people within the city who wish to tap into it, he mentioned that if you've applied for one of those EIDL loans and you haven't heard anything, or you think you should have, and you haven't heard anything, he said, it may be trapped in your spam filter that's part of your email software. He said that some people have contacted him, and that's what he's told them, that's what he's found out. And so I would just give that as a little pointer. If you're expecting something and you haven't heard anything back on the EIDL loan that you may have applied for as a businessman, a business person, that could be something that you check. There could be some type of response that, you know, didn't come into your normal inbox. And then the only thing else with respect to downtown and the Leavenworth Main Street organization, still sponsoring that program I talked about in some detail 2 weeks ago, getting back on track within the downtown business area. It's a program to help generate business downtown among our downtown merchants. Plenty of publicity out on this. Go to the Leavenworth Main Street website. You can find out everything you need to know, but basically if you keep copies of your receipts for any purchases that you make within the downtown over, as long as $100, I think was the first tier. Second tier was $150, and I think the third tier was $200, that you would enter your receipts into a drawing that the Leavenworth Main Street is going to do on 3 occasions. They may have, I think that first one may be coming up soon, but there'll be some pretty good prizes, and it's just a good program to generate that interest and support for our downtown businesses. And I would encourage people within our community, including Fort Leavenworth, to take advantage of that going forward. And I'll also say that I was downtown on Saturday morning. It was a nice day. It was hot, but the sun was out. Farmers market was doing a brisk business. A lot of people there, and I was very, very happy. Maybe that's been the case. Hopefully that's been the case over the last month, because I know that they went from having cars but to being able to have people now actually at the farmers market. And the other day for the farmers market is on Wednesday afternoon, but I was very pleased, and some people looked like they were having a good time with their families and being able to purchase the great merchandise that's available through the vendors that are part of the farmers market here at Haymarket Square within Leavenworth. So to wrap up, let me just go back to COVID-19 for a minute. One of the things I said last night in terms of at least taking a look at whether we might want to do that with respect to an order for requiring masks, just to at least discuss it, is that we have been consistent, as the mayor and the city commission, as the city manager and the city staff, over the last 3 to 3.5 months in terms of meeting the challenges of this COVID-19 health crisis. And that is to do our very best, our priority, overriding priority, and I've said this almost every Facebook Live town hall, is to ensure the health, do everything possible to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all Leavenworth citizens. And in focusing on that, we share pertinent and accurate information relating to COVID-19, adjust the delivery of city services to account for social distancing requirements stipulated by the County Health Department, and as much as possible advocate for our small businesses. And I've just completed a quick update of some of the programs that have been available to our small businesses and that many of them have taken advantage of. But it really does get down to public health and the health of our community. And so that's a responsibility we have as a city commission. And I've always said, as a city commissioner, as a mayor, I listen, I learn, I lead. It's not our intent at this point to definitely pass a ordinance requiring masks. We are going to discuss it next Tuesday at a study session, and it'll be televised as all our meetings are, and I urge citizens to tune in if they can on Channel 2, and if not, check it out on the YouTube video that is always made of our meetings. And the other thing I would just say is the social distancing is still very important, along with the mask wearing, and I would encourage, I mean, right now it's people doing the right thing. Generally, are people doing the right thing? Yes, but there's still a large percentage of people who are going around to our businesses. I think most all the businesses, the employees, the owners, the employees are wearing masks, but there are still a lot of citizens out there not wearing masks. So if we could increase that a little bit, it'll make our chances of spreading this virus less likely. And that is our goal here, to have as healthy a community as we possibly can, particularly as we move up in terms of schools opening within USD 453, the Leavenworth School District, and USD 207, the district, the Fort Leavenworth Public School District, which is a Kansas school district also. Let me ask and the city manager may not know the answer to this question. Have we heard anything from the Fort as far as their mask policy?
I have not been given an update.
You know, it was that you had to wear a mask on post at the PX, the commissary, the Shopette, and Munson Army Health Center. I'm going to go on post later today. I heard, I can't confirm this, that they're, at least within the offices, within all the offices, within the Fort Leavenworth, that people are required to wear masks now. I don't know if when I go on post as I drive on and I show my ID card, whether I will be told to wear a mask. I don't know that, but there has been an increase of cases there. I don't know what the numbers are, but there is concern, and so that's an update provided as part of Fort Leavenworth, which of course we know geographically is within the confines and of the city of Leavenworth, and we consider, you know, a century-old federal partner here with the city of Leavenworth. So be safe out there, wear masks, socially distance, and we will probably 2 weeks from today, we're not sure we're going to have one. There are some conflicts with my schedule and with some other schedules. I will announce later this week, put out through our website, the city's website, which day we will have the next Facebook Live Town Hall. I mean, it could be in 2 weeks from today or maybe 3 weeks from today, but I'm not prepared to make a decision on that right now. So with that, everybody have a good rest of their Wednesday and a good rest of their week. Thank you.